Hey everybody, welcome to another edition of Field of Dreams and ACTN. My name is Steve David and I'm your host. Today we talk nutrition in football, and let me introduce my co-host, Narada Wilson. Narada, welcome to the set.
Hello, it's a pleasure to be here, Steve, and we have a nice topic today, something that I think is most important in Trinidad and Tobago sport, and we'll get down into the nitty-gritty of it.
And also joining us on the set today is Tracy Peer, who is a nutritionist. Tracy, welcome to the set.
Thank you for having me.
All right, we want to tell my viewers, who is Tracy Peer?
I am a sport nutrition consultant. I have my master's in sport and exercise science, but my major and my focus was in sport nutrition. I've always loved food.
Mm-hmm.
And I've always loved sport and working with athletes and being a part of sport. And, you know, getting into this field has opened up my eyes to so many different avenues in sport, and primarily, you know, how an often overlooked topic is so influential in the arena, so to speak.
Because you're right, people don't, we play sport and we're professionals at whatever we do, and people don't pay much attention to an important thing is nutrition.
Yeah, it's one of the, I guess, least focused on elements of the support services that are available to our athletes. Unfortunately, I consider it more of a cultural thing. Hopefully something that we can grow out of as a country and as a Caribbean community. Mm-hmm. You know, because I've heard before, one of my favorite sayings is that you can't out-train poor nutrition.
Right.
And you really can't. It's the hidden advantage that a lot of people don't necessarily tap into. So I'm here to start tapping.
Narada, do you have a nutritionist in your group that you use?
Yeah. Well, fortunately, I must say we have used Tracy on a couple occasions for some events that we would have, you know, because and some of the players I direct to her, because I think because it's something that the player reports and says he's been eating right, but you're doing most of eating at home. Mm-hmm. You know, I think it's something where they take the opportunity to maybe not tell you the truth. And I think Tracy would be able to tap into seeing if she could say factually if results show that with better nutrition yields better results, or if not, because our players tend to think that they're so far ahead, and something as simple as just tweaking your daily intake could probably give you a much better outcome. So yes, we do use it. We see the importance of it. I was fortunate enough in my studies to have 2 or 3 courses in nutrition. And when you're going through some of those charts and you see what some of the results could put out, you really do understand. I think it's something that we have to introduce at the lowest level to ensure that people later on know of its importance.
Correct.
Any statistical data that you can give us that agrees with what Narada just said? Not
right off the top, but I think a lot of the reports, I guess, are more subjective, and there are so many athletes who come back to me after, you know, we've had our consultations, and we do, in my own, you know, personal line of work, they come and they say, you know, Tracy, I feel so much better, or I'm able to train harder or push further. And it's something that they might not necessarily have thought would have been the problem. Because most people tend to look outside of nutrition as if they see an issue or something that's needed to be changed. So it's really refreshing when you get those results and those reports. And I mean, there's so much scientific data out there that suggests, you know, from supplementation to just eating properly and correct counting of macros and micros and, you know, vitamins, minerals, all of the things that are necessary, especially when you're putting out so much physical energy and it's so draining on the body. I mean, as an elite athlete, some train 2 or 3 times a day. There's no way you can fuel that type of exertion without properly understanding where your needs lie.
What got you into this? Did you just stumble into this nutrition thing? What really got you? What interest?
Actually, kind of. I was in my undergraduate. I actually did a course in it's a psychology course, basically food and emotions and how food affects the person in general. And, you know, I got into it. I've always been a lover of sports. I've played sports. Sometimes don't look the part, but I've played sports before all my life. And so I came home a bit confused or not necessarily focused as to where to next. And again, being a lover of sport, you know, I follow our local athletes. I'm actually friends with some of them. And it kind of blew my mind that we had never carried a sport nutritionist to a major event. Like, we have never carried a sport nutritionist to the Olympics or to the Pan Am Games or CAC Games or any major, you know, event like that. And so I started looking more into the field and doing a lot of research, the effects of nutrition and sports and all of these things. And I stumbled literally in my research upon a program in Leeds Metropolitan and fell in love with it. I mean, I sat up, you know, bright-eyed at all my classes, and I really, really loved it. And it was, you know, something I'm never regretted, you know, getting into.
So if I am a sports personality and I say, Tracy, you're right, I want to get into or change my diet, or I want to get involved in a nutrition program or something, how do you start me? Where do you say I go from there?
You're coming to me as an athlete?
Coming to you as an athlete.
Because that's the first step, understanding your client. Because
Right.
if an athlete comes to you, it's very different from if a coach comes to you.
Okay.
So, and I think it's also very important. Yes, you're coming to me as an athlete. One of the first questions I'm going to ask you is, how does your coach feel about this? Because the holistic union of these support sciences, psychology, nutrition, physiology, and, you know, physiotherapy are nothing if there's not that coach buy-in, you know, because
Right.
they're so influential.
Right.
So that would be the first thing I ask you. But then, you know, we go with what phase of training are you in? You know, what competition are you training for? And then I guess this is where I also interact with the coach in terms of, have you ever done something like body composition analysis before? So in your last competition, what was your fat mass? What was your lean muscle mass? You know, how did you perform? What are our goals? Then, so we'll do another assessment, and then I'll ask you for as honest as possible, because I remember you said, Narada, that some of them tend to tweak a little, but as honest as possible, a diet diary, you know, lifestyle habits, etc., so that we can make the plan as personalized as possible. Because I think it's also, aside from psychology, I feel like nutrition is one of the most personal fields. People eat when they're happy, they eat when they're sad, you know. Food is comfort. So I think it's a very intimate kind of relationship that you form with the athlete.
So I don't want to say it, but so you look at a kid and say, hey, did you move your bedroom close to the kitchen? Because you wouldn't do that, right?
No.
So I mean, if a kid is overweight, let's say, is he treated differently to one who looks like he is not, like he's already eaten well, or you still go through the same, look at what's your diet schedule?
The process is generally the same, especially for adolescents, and it's so important at this point to also have the parents be understanding of what's going on. I mean, your body changes so drastically. I mean, growth spurts, you can have an athlete come into you at like 12 pounds. Yeah, you know, in 2 weeks, he's 45 pounds. You know, so it's a challenge sometimes with adolescents. So they're generally treated the same because the changes are just so intense. But primarily with adolescents, the more important person in that whole scenario is the parent. Because, I mean, no 12-year-old is going into Massey stores and buying their whole week's worth of groceries, you know. So it's really at that point, it's getting the parents to understand and getting them to be patient with themselves and with their bodies, because they're changing. You know, between Form 1 and Form 3, you have two totally different people within the same athlete. So the process is generally the same, yes, in terms of how they're treated, the body compositions, the diet analysis, etc. Depending on the, I guess, how drastic certain changes need to be, that's where I mentioned, the holistic approach to sport, because there may be a psychological problem or a psychological reasoning, let me not say problem, behind certain eating habits that I may not be qualified to, address. So, I pass it on to my sports psychologist, and we work together in a situation like that to really get the athlete to where we need them to be.
I was wondering, in terms of the kids and the adolescents, we see a lot of the sporting events. You're saying that you have to work with the parents sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
How do you get parents, to some extent, to break certain habits? Because we have, for example, it's probably cheaper to purchase a soft drink or some sweet drink than buying some sort of, hydration sort of drink.
Yeah.
The foods we always see at the events, there's fried food, easily accessible 24 hours a day,
Correct.
opposed to some sort of vegetable or lean meat or something like that. How is the buy-in from the parents when you try to consult on that level?
Try to be as diplomatic as possible. Honestly, at that point, it's more of a financial issue sometimes, because you do have parents, that come to you. They want to try, but
can't afford it.
exactly, they just simply can't afford it. So I think in my field, or in working in the Caribbean, in Trinidad, that has been one of my biggest setbacks, because you have these athletes and the parents who are both willing to try, but sometimes it's more of a financial issue than a willingness issue. But when it is a willingness issue, it's more so a lack of understanding. They will need the same amount of, educational courses and clinics, etc., as the children do, to really understand, well, how is this affecting my child? Because it's not one of those things that you see immediately. If you're training in the gym and you have poor form, you're going to feel it immediately. But, you don't see poor nutrition right away. So it's, in that sense, it's harder to get them to buy in and to understand, in the long term, it's really going to, come through and help. So
implementing what you're trying to say, implementing it with kids is a lot more tougher than doing it with an adult who is actually buying his own food. And you could say, hey, you need to change your diet, you need to buy this,
Yes and no, simply because the children don't have the power. So if you're looking at it from that aspect, they don't have, the financial ability to walk into a grocery and buy what they need.
Right.
Sure. But the saying that you can't teach an old dog new tricks is around for a reason, because you find that older athletes who have been successful throughout their careers tend to come to you and say, but I made it this far with these habits.
Yeah.
Why change now?
So you wouldn't make it any further.
So, I guess, but so it's not necessarily an issue of the, junior athletes being easier than the older ones. It's all about your mindset and your mentality, because you can be, a 3-time Olympian and still acknowledge, okay, when I started this journey is not where I am now, and so I need, extra help. But then you also have those athletes who are like, well, as I said, I've made it this far, I've been this successful. So.
But you see, and I think we understand, because we understand when we're younger, we get away with a lot more. And as we get older, then we have to put more attention to what we put in our bodies and stuff. So as an ex-athlete or professional athlete, I know that taking care of your body gets even more important as you grow older, because this keep fitness is even tougher.
Yeah. But what I also tell my athletes, why would you, and this is, I feel like our mindset as a society, we are very reactive. So, I'm getting older, let me start eating right. How about we start eating right from young? Let's be proactive about this whole situation, so that we don't have to be playing catch up.
Right.
We're already there, and we're moving in a kind of linear manner as opposed to scrambling to fix what might need to be fixed, you know, when as a aged athlete.
Right. Well, I mean, and so that means educating the parent to begin with.
Yes.
And the parent makes sure. But a lot of parents try to get the kids to eat the green beans and all the different things, and the kid, when they eat the hot dog on the plate, right? And they throw the beans under the table for the dog. So, I mean, so education, sometimes the parents try, but the kids don't.
This is why I also think it's important to educate the athletes themselves. I think creating a society and a culture of autonomous, informed athletes is so important. So a lot of my role is not just parent education or coach education, but athlete education. So one of actually my most rewarding groups that I'm currently working with is the under-14 football team. And you just see how excited these boys get to learn and to be able to have what they consider adult intellectual discourse about their food, because they're now able to explain, no, mommy, I need X, Y, and Z before training, and I need A, B, and C after training, and here's why. So giving them that voice, I think, is so important, because then it changes the culture in the home, because now they're able to educate everyone.
Right.
And as I said, autonomy is so important, especially at that age, you know, when they're developing and they're growing within themselves and growing as athletes. They want that kind of power, I guess, over their progress, which is so important to give them at this age.
I'm glad you said that, because you're right. If you can tell them, and they can go tell their mom, I can't eat this, I don't want this, I want so-and-so. It's even more powerful.
Correct.
Parents will change it.
And I mean, from the first session I've had with them till the last one where we made foods and I introduced new food to them and they were so excited. They're like, yeah, I can do this, I can do that. It's really rewarding because, I mean, their level of conversation is so different. They know about, you know, quick release carbs and slow release carbs, and they know about protein calculations and micronutrients, and they just speak with so much authority now, just from having the information, that you kind of tell yourself, oh, I know you're going to be so great, you know?
That's until they drive by a McDonald's.
It's true. It's true.
We need to take a break. We'll be right back. Viewers, we'll be right back after the short break.
We are inspired. We are practiced. We learn. We have challenges. We are supported. We persevere. And we shine. This is our commitment to you.
You're now changing your question.
What I would say, Steve, is this.
But my first question was, and roll back that tape.
I made my debut for Crystal Palace against Tottenham Hotspur.
My responsibility was to get the ball and make things happen offensively.
In all the time we've played together, I've always been the decoy.
Welcome to Field of Dreams on ACTN. My name is Steve David, and I'm your host. Okay, welcome back, viewers. Tracy, like we were saying before, how, you know, the importance of nutrition, and it's I can't say new, but it's something different in our sport, and know that the ministry or the TTFA is getting nutritionists on board to try to get us to eat better as players. It's so important, and you getting involved in that now. So let's talk about some of those people you're working with, and what kind of foods you give us all the whole insight about the whole thing.
Okay, so currently, as I mentioned, we're working with the under 14 boys football team. I've also, we work with some of the track and field athletes individually as their season progresses. I've also been working with the national cycling sprint team, who is now in Australia. So it's quite a range, We've worked with, netball, squash, within the department, that is, hockey. So a lot of both team and individual sports as well. So it's different when you're working with a team as opposed to an individual in terms of, how you guide them.
Can you see a difference in let's say a matter of 6 months or a year, or is it tough to tell?
In a team?
In a team or an individual?
In an individual, it's, I guess, easier to identify because it's so personal, exactly. You have that one-on-one analysis, and the assessments can be more consistent, as opposed to if I have a team of, let's say, 15. It takes so long to do 15 body composition assessments that it's a lot harder to keep that really pinpoint, kind of accurate track of their progress, but you do see it. So this is why I mean, you're going to hear me stressing this so much. Working as a holistic team is really important, because then I also get feedback from the strength and conditioning coach, for example. So I may not have an actual body composition on player number 11, but from his or her strength and conditioning coach, I'm able to say, they're lifting so much more, or or from the coach, their energy levels in training have increased, or they're sprinting faster. So that's why I also think assessments are so important across all of the fields, not just nutrition, because then we feed kind of this information off of each other to just build up the athlete or the team, towards the one common goal, which is good performance.
So nutrition is taking credit for the efficiency, and you're giving credit to nobody else, right?
No, not at all. Everybody works together, definitely, because one hand can't clap.
Right.
And, to just throw cliches out there, it takes a village to raise a child. So it does take an entire sports science village to, I think, really build or create the best athlete or team possible. Because my job would be 10 times more difficult if I didn't have a psychologist, for example, on board, or a strength and conditioning coach to feed ideas and information and just reports off of, and sit together and discuss this one individual or team.
The team effort is what
Yeah, it is. It is really a team effort.
Yes, and I think what I was wondering is if over the last year since you've been back to now, or at least when the dream started, have you seen an improvement in Trinidad and Tobago's national teams, or just teams in general?
You laugh at
Seeing the importance, because if we look at any major tournament or any major country, they always travel with a nutrition team, or a support staff, if you want to call it that, because they've seen, hey, if I'm going to X country and I don't necessarily know what I have access to, I need this person to tell me if this could be supplemented, or we're already on a particular program, this is the stage in our training that we are at, so this is what we expect. Do you think that we're closer, at least, to achieving where you think it should be, or are we stagnant, or we actually going on the right path?
I think, depending on the sport, quite frankly, we are fluctuating in that, as you said, to get to that point, you have to have a trajectory planned. And I think that may be where we, as a sports culture, tends to fall short. You know, I'm not even sure if I'm allowed to say this, you know, we give money to athletes who've already succeeded. Or, you know, we will send a nutritionist or a psychologist or a physiotherapist or a physiologist with a team who's already qualified. So I think what we need as a sport culture is really start backpedaling a little and starting from the base, really laying the groundwork for all of these persons to come on board already integrated as part of the team and not necessarily as an addition. Because I think that's, especially for fields like psychology, for example, are so important that you have the groundwork already established before you make it to major tournament.
So, you know, you work with the under 14, but they don't live in, they go to the houses.
Back home, they do.
So how you keep up with their nutrition when they're going back to the houses and they're not like even living in, you have control over that.
Well, that's the thing. None of our athletes are living, so the same question applies to
You have to hope.
the senior athletes.
So do you give them a list that this is what you eat for breakfast, this is what you eat for lunch, this is what you eat for dinner?
Definitely. As you know, part of the process, we give them, you know, meal plan. I don't like to say meal plans, more like meal suggestions, because I'm truly of the belief that if they understand what they need and when, you could just give a suggestion. So I think the education series is so important, you know, alongside the here, eat this, or there, eat that. Because it's important for them to know why. Because what if, you know, I say mashed potatoes is on the menu for Tuesday, but where they are, it's not available. You know, they would need to know why I suggested mashed potatoes as opposed to cassava or, you know, whole grain rice or something like that, so they can make an informed substitution. So I do meal suggestions.
No, if it was a live-in camp, you give it to the cook. So
Correct.
This is what you cook, and this is what they eat.
Which is what I do when teams go on, when they are in camp, you know, or if a coach comes to me and says, you know, we're going into a training camp or a competition setting. I have done that in the past, you know, liaise directly with
The cooks.
the chef and the hotel managers or wherever they're staying. So we're like, give them this.
Right.
Because then buffets can be a problem.
And it's not just eating this today, it's just changing your whole lifestyle.
Correct.
Eating lifestyle.
Correct.
And they need to understand that. So it's an educational process.
It is. It's very, very much a process. It's not, oh, you have one nutrition session, you're set for life.
Right.
It's definitely a process, and understanding why and understanding or accepting you may fall short. I mean, some days you just want KFC.
Right.
So it's a process, and as you said, it's a lifestyle and something that I think is necessary for us to build as a culture, because I feel like our athletes maybe get away with a lot just because they wear the badge of athlete, but I would like to see our athletes understand more than ever, really, that to wear that badge comes with a certain amount of responsibility and commitment and dedication to every aspect of the field, from getting your body fit to your mind fit to your eating habits, you know.
So tell me, if this is how I cheat. If I come home, I feel for a solo, I would take a bottle of water and I take some solo and put in it so I can get the smell of it while I drink it. So
it is
I feel
even
like I'm
something
drinking
I
a
was
solo.
going to say, even for the kids, when you said like the parents, you know, they may not be able to afford. I've heard of, we know, for example, Gatorade might be too much sodium. So, hey, we pour half, you know, and get away with some.
I mean, yeah, there are tricks, you know, that you can implement, you know, based on your situation. everybody has their little cheats, which is what I ask my athletes to be very upfront with. I have a sweet tooth like it's nobody's business, and I'm upfront about it.
Right.
So I want my athletes to give me, that same honesty. Be like, Tracy, I need my fix, So and then you find ways around it.
Right.
I'm not very big on elimination diets, which it cuts it out completely.
Right.
I'm big on substitution. So instead of maybe the whole tub of ice cream, let's have sorbet.
Right.
So I am very aware, as I said, because there's such a personal element to food. Some people, as I said, eat when they are nervous. And you have to be aware of that with your athletes. 2-3 weeks before competition, you can have an athlete just binge eating because they're so nervous. So those are things that you need to find your way around so much. Not necessarily cut that habit from them because it might be beneficial to their performance.
Correct.
So you don't want to cut that type of habit, but you want to alter it in a way that's not harmful to their performance.
What's some of the foods you recommend? Because I tell you why I asked that, because like my pregame meal when I played ball was spaghetti.
What is it with footballers and spaghetti?
But that's my pregame meal.
Y'all love spaghetti.
No, but that is the best. But sometimes you look at your buddy next to you eating a nice big hunk of steak, right? And you're like, oh Lord, but still, or fried chicken that's smelling up the place. But this is what I perform best under. So so what are your recommended kind of? This is for breakfast, or this should be for lunch, or this should be for pregame meal. Give me some recommendations that somebody out there might be listening that might want to take your advice.
Oh, I wish it was that easy, because so you would ask me that question and I would counter asking you, all right, so breakfast before what? Are you going to train in the gym, or are you going on the field? How long before your next training session? Are you all doing tactical work? Are you all doing cardio? What are you all doing? So those are questions I will ask you.
Because if we go in and work out, then breakfast is not breakfast. Breakfast is going to be after workout. So or a couple of hours before workout.
Exactly. So I'll ask you, are you training at 9 a.m. or are you training at 5 a.m.? Because then my recommendations are completely different.
Right. Right.
So if, for example, your training is at 5 a.m. and you need to be up by 4, most people don't want to sit down with, eggs and bread at 4 a.m.
Yeah. Well,
So you make recommendations based on not just the time, but what that person can handle. Because some people also can't eat heavy, what they would consider heavy meal, like up to an hour before, for example. So it's really about knowing your athletes and understanding that they want, especially if you're going to train in the morning, your breakfast, you want those quick release carbs. You really want to get that energy into their body so that it's primed and ready to perform. Understanding if do they have another session in the afternoon, for example, because that's going to alter what they eat for lunch. Because you mentioned a steak, but red meat, a lot of people don't know this, can take up to a full 24 hours to digest.
right.
Why would you want your body to be struggling to digest this protein when it has to perform right after?
And guys would eat it for pregame meal.
Exactly.
And that's why we eat spaghetti. We don't have a thing,
Yeah, but, okay, so what do you eat your spaghetti with?
But I don't eat meat, period. So I eat spaghetti with some cheese on it and stuff, a little bit of cheese, all the starches, and that's it. And I go and play my ball. After the game, it's a different story. Okay. After the game, I get a good full meal, but before. But so if you were an athlete, what would be your game day breakfast, lunch,
and dinner?
Dinner after the dinner. Breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and you're playing the game at 6 in the evening.
Okay. My game is at 6 in the evening. Most times you'll have to get to the field by 4.
Right.
So my last snack time frame because you didn't mention snacks, but snacks are very important, would be, I always work back, would be around 3:30.
Right.
At which point, you know, you want to give some really high fast release carbs, you know, high glycemic index, high glycemic load carbs, so that it can fuel them through the game.
Correct.
Through the game. And
So your whole day of eating then, let's call it that. What would that be?
Well, I
You
work.
get up in the morning.
I'm working backwards. So at that point, you know, you can have a sandwich with white bread, and somebody will be like, "What, white bread?" But it digests quickly.
That's for what time of the
So
day?
this is about 3:30.
3:30, right before
So you're on
the
the
last meal before the
yeah.
game.
So teams usually have that meal right before
So that's your pregame meal.
with snack.
Your pregame snack.
Yes, because then you have lunch at about 1, but you want a lunch with a lot of slow release carbs. So at that point, I'd probably have cassava or, you know, a lot of low glycemic load foods, so that when they start to digest and break down, it's later on, and I get that last kick of energy in the game, you know, during the game. I also lower my fat content, so I wouldn't necessarily have a fried food, because at least personally, it tends to sit right here.
Right.
You know, so I wouldn't have a high fat meal, or, for example, my protein would be an easily digestible protein. One that we call the thermic effectively food is not as high, so your body doesn't have to struggle to break it down as much. So I wouldn't have red meat.
Right. That would be game day you're talking about.
Yes. You know, working backwards. Obviously, I love vegetables, so I actually have vegetables at every meal. You know, you have your fruits in between, things that aren't necessarily too heavy, because I can't have bananas. Like before I go run, I feel like every step I take, they're right here.
Right.
But the watermelons and fruits like that are easier for my body to handle. So that's just me. But I know some athletes who can have a watermelon, boom, right before they go on the field.
So you learn your body, you learn yourself.
Exactly. And as a nutritionist, you learn your athlete.
Right.
Working back, I'd probably have a snack before lunch. And then breakfast, I tend to not have yogurt or milk foods on game days, because, you know, you want to avoid that mucus buildup as, you know, as much as possible. And a lot of yogurts tend to be very acidic, so you don't necessarily want to change your pH too much. But water, hydration is so essential. And yeah.
So you think about this one. We're going for a break, but I'll give you the question before the break.
Okay.
You are the nutritionist for the Trinidad and Tobago football team. So you know that's low budget, right? They don't have money. So you're going to prepare breakfast and lunch for them, because the game is at 3 o'clock or 4 o'clock in the evening.
Okay.
So the pregame meal would be right at lunch. So breakfast and lunch for them, and dinner after. What would that be? Viewers will be right back after the short break.
We are inspired. We are practiced. We learn. We have challenges. We are supported. We persevere. And we shine. This is our commitment to you.
You're now changing your question.
What I would say, Steve, is this.
But my first question was, and roll back that tape.
I made my debut for Crystal Palace against Tottenham Hotspur.
My responsibility was to get the ball and make things happen offensively.
In all the time we've played together, I've always been the decoy.
Welcome to Field of Dreams on ACTN. My name is Steve David, and I'm your host. Okay, welcome back, viewers. Okay, Tracy.
Right.
So we just set it up. Low budget Trinidad team. You gotta prepare a meal for the whole team. Everybody eating the same thing. What would that be?
Okay. Well, the first thing I won't be preparing. I'd be advising.
You would be advising on it. Yes.
Okay, so for lunch, I would still suggest, the same slow release carbohydrates, and which is good because those are generally cheaper. So, your provisions, etc. And I think it's really a benefit, a plus. I found working with local athletes in that they enjoy that. That's their comfort food. I've had athletes tell me we could have callaloo, and I'm like, yes, please eat your greens. So I have no problem throwing, callaloo in the mix, especially before game day, because as I said, it's also a mood booster. They feel at home in a hotel when they have that type of food. So, but we also love sauce, so I kind of have to battle that, So I would probably do grilled chicken or baked, avoid the acidic based sauces. So like avoid the potato and not potato, like tomato sauce and, the barbecue sauce and things like that, and garlic sauce, because those tend to be really acidic. So that's generally my battle. But if you throw in some like callaloo, or they really like beans, or, you tend to get away. But prior to that, for breakfast, you want to, as I said, really pull back on the yogurt that is available to them. But if the game is at 4, you want them to have a good hearty breakfast. So you have the eggs available, pull back on the bacon. You have a lot that we like the omelette stations a lot, like active food, as I like to say. So, you have an omelette station, you have you definitely your bread there, your oatmeal there, etc. Pull back on some of the less beneficial, I guess, generic breakfast food items that you would have there, like as I mentioned, the sausages and the bacon and stuff. And you have what they're accustomed to, because I think familiarity is also very important. So tea, coffee, juice, water, have it there. Obviously at every meal you have the fruits available.
Lots of fruits.
Yeah, lots of fruits, because it's easy.
In your experience with dealing with some of the teams, do you think there are particular sports that persons are a bit more inclined or easily, how to put it, understanding of the importance of nutrition, and there are some sports that may be a bit tougher to, whether it be teams or individual?
Oh, no, definitely. I think it's also the culture of the sport.
Correct.
For example, like football teams eat together as a unit every meal when they're at camp, for example. Rugby teams tend to do that as well. So it's easier to, feed the entire team. But with a sport like cricket, they don't have those team meals.
Right.
So it's kind of harder to infiltrate that cricket culture, because then when you have these long lulls in between the game, I mean, we've seen, cricketers sitting down with large plates of food, and you have a whole game going on.
Right.
So it's definitely based on the culture of the sport. For example, track and field is another one that's a little bit more difficult to infiltrate, because you have heats and then, the finals sometimes all in the same day, or like bang, 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 days 1, 2, and 3, and then a lull.
Right.
So it's definitely the culture of the sport, and, the team dynamics is really important as well.
But then what about the fact that in football, for example, you have players that are sometimes very high up there? Is it a challenge working with athletes, because football has a composition of players that may be local, now starting off at the highest level I'm speaking of, and then there are players that over the years have been really up there.
Right.
Is it easy for you to influence everyone just because it's a team, because we also know that in football, the top players may sleep in a single room and the newcomers may share a room.
Right.
So there could be a difference in terms of the nutrition as well, because he could say, well, hey, I play at X level, or is it easy because it's still a team?
It's actually, I wouldn't say it's easy because it's a team, because I don't think it's ever easy working with more than 5 personalities, to be quite frank. But ironically, what I've found is that the players with international experience tend to buy in more to the concept of needing a nutritionist on staff or following the guidelines that are given to them. Because I think they have that level of exposure and a different level of professionalism as compared to the local athletes who may not to, you know, they just not to discredit any, you know, local based players, but you're exposed to one type of culture, one type of sporting culture, one type of food culture, one type of social culture, as opposed to the international athletes who have that more worldly understanding and experience, who, you know, be like, it's just for a time. I understand why we're getting these foods as opposed to these foods, and kind of actually more willing than I would say the local place or even the junior athletes who may be playing internationally, but they now start, you know, to really follow along with the program.
Do you recommend like energy bars and stuff just before the games and stuff, or that is not part of the diet you would recommend?
It's not necessarily something I would recommend, because I truly feel that through a more, I don't want to use the word organic, but, you know, organic food source, you can get, you know, get the same benefits. And we're also, marketing is a wonderful tool. And we are often so misled about what the ingredients in these energy bars and these energy drinks and these supplements are, that half the time we're doing more harm than good. So I kind of prefer to know exactly what, you know.
Well, if I, let's say, lunch was at 12 o'clock and the game is at 4 o'clock, and right about 2:30, 3 o'clock, I start feeling hungry. I heard you said something about a little sandwich and a chicken sandwich, but I don't want to eat that. So, I mean, my favorite was a banana. I think that's good. I can eat all banana and live all day on a banana, but not everybody can do that.
Right.
So what would you recommend for that reason, for that just hour before the game?
Well, then I would say fruit is always, I think, a good way to go, unless, of course, you have an athlete who has a negative reaction, you know, to certain fruit.
Well, like yourself, fruit, the bananas stay here.
Yeah, but some people it goes the other way, right? You know, so so it's just about knowing an athlete. I would always put fruit on the menu. I think, honestly, sandwiches are very safe, especially when you're dealing with a large group. I tend to, allergies are so important to be aware of as well. So you don't want to go, you know, giving your whole team granola with a bunch of nuts on it, and then you have, you know, allergies. So, as I said, I always think sandwiches are safe. Fruits, bars are good, but once you are very, very aware of the ingredients, you know, what's in it, etc., because the last thing you want is water breathing down your neck because you ate a sketchy protein bar, you know. So
you've been with you were saying something?
Yeah, I was going to say that I remember I was just going to say, if you probably support something like this. I once did a small nutrition course, and the lecturer would say something that, just as you said with the marketing, a lot of the fruits, you know, and they're speaking in Brazil, or a lot of the foods that they have, honestly, you could actually not need any of these supplementary stuff, because they just have to find the food that gives you, because a lot of them, yes, they give you X, but they also put in Y, Z, A, B, C into your system when you could get a particular natural food that is solely concentrated on that particular, you know, protein,
Mhm.
vitamin, or whatever the case is. And it was even something that when the Brazilians studied Usain Bolt's diet, they were trying to find this one thing that, you know, could just be off, because it's everything is natural, you know. And if it's something that you would support, you know, that we may not necessarily need all these supplementary things, we just need to direct them to the food sources that give them that particular.
Sweet potato. What you say? Yeah.
Yeah. No, definitely. I do find myself only now really supporting supplementation if necessary, but I think I have been such a skeptic about it because, as I said, the power of marketing, you just have all this out there, and you know, you have recovery drinks being labeled as energy drinks, and then you have protein shakes being labeled. So I think it's also very important to educate the athletes about supplementation, why they would take it, you know, because it's hard. I mean, if you are training, you know, twice, 3 times a day, it really, and sometimes you just want a nap. It's hard to get in the macros that you need, you know, so it's definitely more of a lifestyle situation. It can be done on natural food, of course, definitely, because I really don't think the first Olympics ran on, you know, with supplements. So it could be done. It's something I definitely 100% support, but I will never, I'd always advise that my athlete, you know, read more and be more aware before they start even considering a supplement.
You know, you said nap and it hit me because I sleep a lot. Is that part of nutrition? Do you make recommendations? Hey, you guys got to have, of course, hydration, and is rest a part of that whole umbrella, nutrition umbrella?
Rest is a part of the umbrella of all the sports sciences.
Right.
Because I will tell you, make sure you rest. Because that's when your body really builds back. It's like, oh, okay, let's take a little break, build back, and start again. So food can take you so far, but if you're running, you know, you could put premium gasoline in a broken down car. It's still a broken down car unless you fix it. You know, so, and I think any sports scientist will tell you the same. Psychologists, you can't, your brain needs that rest time. You know, strength and conditioning coach will tell you, how do you focus in the gym if you're not rested, and then you're risking injury. So I think more than under the umbrella of nutrition, I think rest is under the umbrella of sports sciences and being a good athlete, being an aware athlete.
So holistically, what are you hoping for? Because you're all part of this system now. What are you hoping for that Trinidad and Tobago will get it?
I am hoping that we have a system in place where our athletes have access to the services that are necessary for them to really develop the way that we push them to be developed. You know, we praise success, but I would love to see us as a society praise effort and consistency. You know, I would love more, I guess, coaches and administrative powers to buy into the sports sciences and understand their importance in getting to where they need to be. Because I understand that the whole system is based on, you know, the bottom line and dollars and cents. But it has to start somewhere, you know, and I would love to see us as a sport culture grow in, I will say it again, you know, being more holistic and being more understanding of the importance of these support services, working in conjunction with the coach, understanding the athlete, working with parents, and everybody just moving forward.
Good, and so you just did that. So make an appeal now to the kids who are watching this show, and let them know why nutrition is so important for their betterment of or their growth in the sport.
I think what I always do, it's so funny, when I first started speaking to kids, I realized that they this analogy works best. Everybody knows the sports cars, the fancy cars, the Ferraris and your Porsche and Lamborghinis and all these things. You wouldn't go into a gas station and put diesel in your Lamborghini. You won't go into a gas station and put diesel in your Porsche. What you will do is put premium gasoline.
I hope it runs in premium.
I hope it runs in premium.
Okay.
And that's how you have to look at your body.
Right.
As an elite vehicle, as a top class, you know, top of the line machine that needs to be well oiled and well fueled, or else it won't work.
Right.
It will no longer be premium.
Right.
Especially driver Tita.
Narada, any parting words?
Yeah, no, I think, you know, just as Tracy said, the support services or the sports science department is, you know, important to our sporting culture. I think this information just has to transcend to the kids and the parents as well, who are influential in the kids' growth. And the more and more, you know, we sort of see the results, because I also believe, just as you said with marketing, we have to show the results. Once we could show that, hey, if you eat this, this could potentially happen. Kids are visual today. Show them what could happen, and, you know, they would take it in. And I like the idea of you dealing with the 14, 15-year-olds who could then go home and influence their parents. I think that is perfect, because the parents at that age, they tend to listen to them a little more, give them an ear, and they want to see them reach further. So it's a pleasure having her today.
And you do have statistical analysis and all of this, and you would have a chart and all of that, right?
Yeah, usually in presentations, they tend to be a little more scientific.
Good. Tracy, I want to thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for
I really
having
appreciate you. Narada, thank you for being here.
Always a pleasure, Steve.
ACTN, thank you for giving us the opportunity. Viewers, thank you for viewing the show every Monday night at 8 p.m. on ACTN. And we also repeat on a Tuesday at 1 o'clock in case you missed it on Monday night. We do have a Facebook page. You can check us out. We do have an email address, fieldofdreamstt@gmail.com. There you can drop us a line. The show is ended. Go in peace. My name is Steve David. I'll see you next Monday night. Good night.